My wife was cheating on me right in the elevator with two of our neighbors. But I made sure that filth wouldn't go unpunished. If someone had told me 6 months ago that my marriage was a lie, I would have laughed in their face. Emily and I were what people called couple goals. I work in software development, nothing flashy but stable. I'm the dependable one, the guy who remembers to take out the trash, who gets up early to walk the dog, who listens more than he talks. And Emily? Emily is magnetic. She walks into a room and people lean in. 32, a creative director at a boutique design agency, always dressed like she stepped out of a catalog without even trying. Witty, warm, elegant, the kind of woman your mother says is just too good to be true. Maybe she was. We live on the 12th floor of a sleek high-rise downtown. Clean, quiet, expensive. The kind of place with marble in the lobby and fresh-cut flowers near the elevators. Our condo is all white oak floors and soft lighting. Minimalist. Peaceful. Like our life together used to be. We bought it 3 years ago, celebrated with champagne on the balcony, just the two of us wrapped in a throw blanket, watching the city lights flicker like fireflies. I remember thinking, this is it. We made it. We didn't talk much with our neighbors beyond the usual hellos. Mark, who lived on the 14th floor, was hard to miss. Tall, athletic, always wearing gym clothes and carrying protein shakes like they were IV drips. Former college athlete, now a personal trainer. Loud, charismatic, the type who claps you on the back and tells you you're looking lean, man, even if you're pushing a dad bod. Trevor was the opposite, lived on the 11th floor. Quiet, pale, glasses, another tech guy, back-end engineer or something like that. Always seemed to be listening more than talking. Too quiet for my taste, but harmless. And Emily? She had a way of getting along with everyone. It was her superpower. Looking back now, I see the cracks. But at the time, they just looked like quirks. Like the elevator. Sometimes it would freeze between floors, not for long, 30 seconds, a minute tops, then it would jolt and keep moving. It never happened when I was with someone, only when Emily took it alone. She even joked about it once, called it the magic stop. I didn't think anything of it. I should have. God, I really should have. I didn't want to become one of those husbands, the paranoid kind who checks phone logs or sniffs clothes for cologne. That wasn't me. That had never been us. But Emily started coming home later. It's the new workout program, she said one night, tossing her keys onto the kitchen island like it was nothing. Mark's running these high-intensity group sessions. They're brutal, but I feel amazing. I nodded, pretending to stir my tea, even though it had long gone cold. And sometimes I just stop by Kara's for wine after, she added casually. You know how we vent about work. Kara was her best friend. Single, fun, always planning brunches that Emily usually skipped. You never want to come with me, she teased, nudging me with her hip. Don't turn into an old man yet. I smiled, but something about her energy was off. Frenetic, like she was buzzing beneath the surface. That week, I found new lingerie in our shared drawer. Lace, black. Not her usual soft, neutral stuff. When did you get this? I asked, trying to sound playful. She turned and winked. For you, obviously, but she never wore it for me. I chalked up the weird feelings to stress. Her work had been rough. Tight deadlines, demanding clients. Maybe I was projecting. Overthinking, that's what I told myself. Still, the elevator kept glitching, always in the same spot, between the 10th and 11th floors, sometimes for a few seconds, sometimes longer. One morning it froze for nearly a full minute with me inside. My stomach dropped, not from the stop, but from the familiar growing sense that something wasn't right. I called building maintenance. The guy showed up 2 days later with a clipboard and a half-eaten apple. It's working fine, he said after running some tests. Might be a voltage fluctuation, but nothing to worry about. Just tell your wife not to press all the buttons at once, he chuckled. I forced a laugh. Then came the night I saw her. I was coming back from a late grocery run. Milk, eggs, something frozen for dinner because we'd both been too tired to cook lately. I stepped into the lobby just as the elevator doors were closing. Inside Emily. Her hair was messy, lips slightly swollen, cheeks flushed. She was adjusting her coat like she'd just thrown it on in a hurry. She didn't see me at first. When she did, her expression shifted, only for a second, but it was enough. A flash of surprise. Then the usual warm smile. Hey you, she said, stepping out. Didn't expect you back already. I forgot the eggs, I replied automatically. She walked past me, reaching for the grocery bag. You're adorable. But I couldn't stop staring at her reflection in the stainless steel doors behind us. She looked disheveled, like she'd been running. Or hiding, or no. I shook the thought from my head. It had to be the stress. Had to be. I wasn't sleeping well. At night, I'd lie next to Emily, listening to her quiet, steady breaths while my own thoughts screamed in my head. Something had shifted. I didn't know exactly what or when, but I felt it in my gut. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on work or the news or anything but that damn elevator. But my mind kept going back to her flushed cheeks, the messy hair, the way the doors always stalled in the same place. So I did something I never thought I would. I installed a sensor on the elevator door. It wasn't anything crazy, just a small, discreet smart home trigger. I told myself it was for safety. We lived on the 12th floor after all. If the elevator ever got stuck while Emily was inside, I'd know. That's what I told myself anyway. The app let me track door openings, pauses, and duration of stops. And what I started seeing shook me. Almost every weekday around 6:40 p.m., the elevator would stop between the 10th and 11th floors. Not for long, sometimes 40 seconds, sometimes a full minute. Just enough to raise the hairs on the back of my neck. Always around the time Emily said she was either leaving the gym or grabbing a glass of wine with Kara. It couldn't be coincidence. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I told Emily I was staying late at work for a call with our overseas team. Instead, I came home early, parked a few blocks away, waited. At 6:32 p.m., I watched her walk into the building. At 6:40, the alert buzzed in my pocket. Elevator paused between floor 10 and floor 11. Duration, 58 seconds. I didn't wait. I took the stairs, quietly, breath shallow, heart pounding. Around the 10th floor landing, I stopped. The elevator shaft was silent, then soft, barely audible, a sound, not mechanical, a quick gasp, followed by a rhythmic creak of metal. I froze. I wanted to believe I was imagining things, that it was old pipes, my own breath echoing off concrete. But I knew better. I stood there for another few seconds. Then, without thinking, I turned around and walked back down the stairs. I couldn't face it. Not yet. Back in our apartment, Emily walked in 20 minutes later, smiling like she always did. Her cheeks glowed, her hair freshly tied back. Traffic was a nightmare, she said, tossing her bag down. I kissed her cheek and smiled. Inside, I was unraveling. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe I thought I'd catch her alone, fixing her hair. Maybe just awkward small talk between neighbors. Maybe nothing at all, and that this obsession of mine would finally collapse under its own paranoia. But not this. I left work early again, told Emily I had drinks with coworkers. She kissed me on the cheek that morning like nothing in the world was wrong. Like we were still the couple everyone envied. At 6:37 p.m., I was already in the building, hidden in the dim hallway near the maintenance access on the 11th floor. I'd figured it out the night before. There was a service nook behind the elevator shaft, and if you cracked the hatch just enough, you could see the top of the elevator car through the mesh. The building was quiet, just the hum of fluorescent lights. At 6:40, right on time, the elevator groaned to a slow stop. Right between the 10th and 11th floors, my phone vibrated with the alert. I stepped to the hatch. My hands were trembling as I eased it open. At first, all I saw was the top of the elevator, still, metal, dimly lit from within. Then I looked down through the small grated panel, and I saw them. 3 bodies, moving. Emily was on her knees. Her hair was down, tangled. Her back arched as she leaned toward Mark. Tall, shirt half off, one hand gripping the rail like he owned the space. Tension in his shoulders, sweat at his temples. Trev stood behind her, silent, his head tilted back against the wall, shirt pulled up, watching, breathing hard. Emily was alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. No, ever. Her laugh, breathy, wicked, echoed faintly up through the shaft. Her hands moved over them like this was her stage, like she belonged to none of us, and all of us. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't my wife. Not the woman who curled up on the couch with me on Sundays, who made us tea with lemon when I had the flu, who cried at sad commercials. This was someone else entirely. Then I heard her voice, low, smoky, playful. Shh. We've got 30 more seconds. She knew. They all knew. The elevator wasn't broken. It was their ritual. And I had walked right into the Holy of Holies. My stomach twisted. I stumbled back from the hatch, nearly slipping on the smooth concrete. I braced myself against the wall, heart hammering so loud I thought they might hear it through the metal. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just walked away, out the emergency stairwell, down to the street, out into the chill of the evening. I walked for an hour, didn't speak to anyone, didn't answer texts. That night, when I got home, Emily was already there. Hair clean, makeup fresh, wearing one of my favorite dresses. She smiled and kissed me, asking how my night went. I told her it was fine, and then I excused myself to take a long, cold shower. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, while the woman beside me snored lightly under the blanket we'd shared for nearly 10 years. Her breathing was soft, rhythmic, peaceful, as if she hadn't just been on her knees in an elevator with two neighbors, as if the world hadn't just cracked wide open under my feet. At 4 a.m., I got up, went to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and stood there under cold water until my skin turned red. It didn't help. There was no waking up from this. When I came out, she was already in the kitchen, humming, making coffee, wearing a t-shirt of mine like some cheap theater of domesticity. "Morning, babe," she smiled. I said nothing, just sat at the table and watched her move. So effortless, so practiced. She slid a mug toward me. "Rough night?" I finally spoke. "You get stuck in the elevator yesterday?" Her body stiffened, just for a second, but I caught it, the twitch in her hand, the way her eyes avoided mine. Then she laughed, too loud, too fast. "No. Why?" "Just saw the alert. Looked like it stopped for a bit. Then, oh, maybe someone else did. It's been glitchy, right?" Later, after breakfast, I found her in the bedroom, looking at her phone, probably texting them. I leaned against the doorframe. Quiet. Still. "You sure you weren't in the elevator?" I asked again. She looked up. This time, her face changed, like she knew something was off, like she could feel the shift. "What's this about?" she asked cautiously. I stepped closer. "I just want the truth." Then finally she spoke, fast, like ripping off a Band-Aid. "It was nothing, Jason. Nothing serious. I don't even know why it happened." I said nothing. Her eyes welled up. "It was stupid. Just a moment. They talked me into it, and I didn't want to hurt you. I swear." "You were on your knees." She froze. Tears spilled. It was just, "God, I don't even recognize myself. Please, please, Jason. It doesn't mean anything. I love you. It was a mistake." I watched her cry. Not once did I move to comfort her. This wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. She hadn't fallen in love with someone else. She hadn't even tried to leave. She had desecrated what we had in a metal box suspended over a concrete shaft, with two men who lived just floors away. And then came home like nothing had changed. I stood in the doorway for another long moment. Then I turned around and walked out. Let her sit in the ruin she made. Because now, I wasn't just the betrayed husband. I was the quiet storm coming. We sat at the kitchen table, an uncomfortable distance between us. The mug in front of me was untouched. It had been hours since I left her sobbing in the bedroom, but I still couldn't make myself speak. I just wanted to hear it, hear her explanation, not the lies, but the truth. "Jason," she said finally, voice shaky, "you want to know how it happened? I'll tell you, but don't look at me like that." I didn't respond. I just watched her, emotionless, while she fumbled for the right words. She hadn't even apologized yet. It wasn't planned. "Not really," she started, looking anywhere but directly at me. Her fingers traced the edge of her cup. It started with Mark. He's been so friendly lately. He was just joking, teasing me, And I didn't mind. I thought it was just harmless. I felt my jaw tighten. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I thought we were just friends. But then, one night we went out for drinks. She paused, glancing up at me. I don't know why, but I kissed him. Just a little kiss. A joke, really. I didn't think anything of it. I could feel my chest tightening, but I didn't speak. I just kept listening. She went on, her words becoming a tangled mess. It didn't feel wrong at first. I mean, yeah, he's good looking, and he's always been there. But it wasn't like I was in love with him. "Then what happened?" I forced out, my voice betraying the anger I hadn't let surface yet. Then we ended up in the elevator." She winced, like the words were too heavy to say. "It just happened. We were in that tiny space, and I couldn't stop it. I wanted to yell, but I didn't. I couldn't. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear. And then, when the doors opened, Trevor was there. He looked at us like it was normal." She paused again, her eyes shifting uncomfortably. I didn't say no. I didn't stop it. It was strange, but it was exciting, that rush. I don't know how to explain it. Exciting? My voice was barely a whisper. "You're telling me you kissed him, then let Trevor join in, and it was all exciting?" She met my gaze now, her eyes desperate for understanding. "I know it sounds awful, but it wasn't like we planned it. It was just spontaneous. It was a mistake, okay?" I sat back in my chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. She could see my anger rising, but I was still too stunned to speak. She continued, "You've changed. You're not the same anymore. You've become predictable. You don't excite me like you used to." Her voice was soft, almost sad, but I could feel the cutting truth in her words. For the first time in a long while, I felt something inside me snap. Not sadness, or not hurt, just anger. I couldn't look at her anymore. My mind was buzzing, replaying everything she said over and over again. "You think that's what it is? I asked quietly. You think this is about me? About how I changed? She nodded slowly, the guilt now weighing heavy on her face. Yes, maybe if you hadn't been so distant, so predictable, this wouldn't have happened. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe she was still making excuses for herself, blaming me for what she had done. Tell me, Em, I said, standing up slowly, how does it feel to have two men in an elevator treating you like a toy? Her face paled. You don't get to talk to me like that, she whispered, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. I'm done with your excuses, I said, my voice cold. You did this. She started to cry again, but it was different this time. There was no remorse in her tears, just frustration. Please, Jason, I love you. It didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake. I looked at her, but I couldn't recognize her anymore. For the first time, I didn't feel sorry for her. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, the same way I had been feeling it. But I didn't say a word. I just walked out. I sat in the dimly lit office of the lawyer, trying to act like everything was normal. It had only been a few days since that incident. I could still feel the anger burning deep inside me, but I was careful to keep my face neutral. I wasn't going to rush into anything rash. No, this was going to be calculated. I had already made my decision. Divorce was the only option now, but it wasn't just about ending things with her. It was about showing her that there were consequences for what she did, consequences she wouldn't be able to brush off. The lawyer's office was cool and sterile, with sleek furniture and the faint smell of coffee in the air. He glanced up at me, his expression professional but distant. I had already told him enough for him to understand the situation, but I knew there was more work to be done. I'll prepare the necessary paperwork, he said, tapping a few keys on his computer. It's important to make sure you get everything you're entitled to. You've been married for a while, but this changes things. You're in a strong position, Jason. The apartment is yours, right? I nodded slowly. Yeah, it's all in my name. He raised an eyebrow. She didn't know? I shook my head. She didn't. That was the one piece of leverage I had over her. The apartment, the one thing that meant the most to her in this city, her little sanctuary. The place where she spent countless hours styling it to perfection, filling it with trinkets and little details that made it hers. Now, it was mine. She had no idea. Once I left the lawyer's office, I didn't go home right away. I had something else to do first. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and navigated to the recording app. I knew what I needed. Proof. She had confessed. Now I needed to make sure I had everything. Every word, every excuse, every little admission of guilt. I turned the app on, quietly placing the phone on the kitchen counter. I could hear her moving around in the other room, busy with something that didn't matter. I had to act fast. Em, I said as I walked into the living room. She looked up from her phone, startled, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. I've been thinking. I need to hear you say it. Everything. I want to know the truth. All of it. She hesitated, her eyes darting away. I could tell she was trying to figure out what I wanted to hear, what would make this situation go away. But I wasn't interested in her words anymore. I needed to hear it from her own mouth. Jason, please, she said softly, almost pleading. It wasn't what you think. It was just a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far. Say it, I pushed, my voice low but firm. Say everything. She let out a shaky breath, her shoulders slumping. She knew she was cornered. It was a mistake. I kissed Mark and it just happened. Trevor was there, and it felt wrong, but it also felt exciting. I didn't plan it. It just happened, and I didn't know how to stop it. I made sure to capture every word. I wasn't going to let her weasel out of this. I left it there, her confession hanging in the air like a weight. The next day, I did something I had been thinking about. I called the building's management office. Yes, I need to file a complaint. There's been inappropriate behavior in the elevator. It's a matter of public concern, I said, my voice cool. The woman on the other end didn't ask any questions, just took down the details. Within a week, I received a letter from them stating that new cameras would be installed in the elevators for security purposes. They didn't know it yet, but those cameras were going to catch more than just people forgetting to press the right button. I didn't tell Emily. I didn't need to. Let her think everything was fine, that she was getting away with it. It was easier this way. By the time I came home that evening, I had everything lined up. I had filed the paperwork for divorce. I had the recordings, I had the complaint on file, and I had already made sure that I'd get everything I deserved from the separation. Now it was time to watch her squirm. The evening air was sharp with tension as I walked into the building's lobby, the hum of conversation already rising from the gathering of tenants. It was the annual residents' meeting. Everyone showed up for the usual complaints about the elevator, the parking garage, and the usual small talk that masked the deeper tensions between the neighbors. I wasn't here to discuss parking spaces. I was here to make sure that everything I'd planned came to fruition. The meeting was a typical affair. I stood quietly by the door, scanning the room, watching the faces of people I had come to know over the years. The moment was almost poetic in its calm, everyone thinking this was just another night, another set of insignificant complaints. But for me, this was the calm before the storm. As the meeting dragged on, I casually made my way over to Dan, a neighbor who worked as a journalist. He was a quiet guy, mostly keeping to himself, but he liked to gossip, especially about the scandalous things that happened in the building. I knew he'd be a perfect target. I slid the small USB drive into his hand when no one was looking. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. We were all adults here, after all. He didn't need to know everything. "You'll want to take a look at this," I said, my voice calm, almost casual. "Something you might find interesting." Dan nodded, slipping the drive into his pocket with a quick glance around the room. "You don't mind if I spread the word?" he asked, his eyes already gleaming with the possibility of fresh gossip. "Go ahead," I said, smiling. "You're a journalist. It's your job." The meeting went on, but I could already tell that my subtle move had set the wheels in motion. Dan didn't waste time. By the end of the week, the rumor mill was spinning at full speed. The video, the one where Emily had confessed everything, quickly became the talk of the building. I watched from a distance as whispers turned into murmurs and then into full-blown gossip. It didn't take long for the residents to turn on each other, eyes glancing at one another with newfound suspicion. But it wasn't just the building that started to feel the impact. The managing company stepped in, launching an official investigation into the behavior in the elevator. They were quick to act, perhaps too quick, and within a few days, both Mark and Trevor were served with eviction notices. I knew they had no idea how they'd ended up on the receiving end of the hammer, but I didn't care. They had made their bed, and now they were going to lie in it. Emily didn't know yet, but her world was already beginning to fall apart. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications of gossip and accusations flooding in. It started with the building's residents posting things online. Then came the bigger outlets, the bloggers, the influencers, all eager to get a piece of the scandal. Emily's social media accounts, once filled with curated photos and carefully crafted posts, were now flooded with comments from people who were less than kind. "Is this what you really do in elevators?" One comment read, "Who needs a public scandal when you have a private elevator one?" Another one sneered. Her once pristine reputation, built on years of hard work and careful image crafting, began to crumble in real time. She tried to defend herself at first, posting passive-aggressive replies, but the damage was already done. No matter how hard she tried to clean up the mess, there was no hiding the truth. The more she tried to salvage her reputation, the worse it got. Her credibility in the design world took a massive hit. Meanwhile, I was back in my apartment, calmly going through the divorce papers. I wasn't interested in the drama anymore. It was clear I had won. With a final, controlled breath, I signed the documents. No ceremony, no confrontation, just a clean break. I didn't need the drama. I packed my things quietly, taking only what I knew I'd need for the next chapter of my life. Emily didn't even know I was leaving until it was too late. By the time she realized what had happened, I was already out the door. Her world, as she knew it, had collapsed around her. And as for me, I walked away with my dignity intact. No need for a final confrontation. I didn't need to scream, to shout, to make her feel the pain I had felt. I had already won, and that was all that mattered. I woke up early in my new apartment, the light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a small, cozy place, far more modest than the one I had shared with Emily, but it was mine. The air felt lighter here, the walls free from the suffocating memories that had haunted me for so long. There was no weight, no pressure, just space to breathe and move on. For the first time in months, I actually felt at peace. I'd even gotten a dog, a small golden retriever puppy who was now happily chewing on a new toy in the corner of the living room. I named him Max. We were a team, and the idea of having a companion, even a small one, was something I hadn't even considered in the past. But now, it felt right. Max was always there, looking at me with those innocent eyes that had no idea about the mess I'd left behind. I started traveling more, something I hadn't done in years. Every weekend was an opportunity to see new places, to explore the world beyond the walls of my old life. The world seemed so much bigger now. It wasn't just about being stuck in the same routines. It was about freedom, and it was a freedom I had earned. I met Laura one afternoon at a local cafe. She was sitting at the counter, sipping coffee and reading a book. I wasn't looking for anything serious at first, but she had this quiet confidence about her, something that intrigued me. We started talking, first about the book she was reading, then about everything else: life, travel, books, even art. There was no rush with Laura, no expectations, no pressure. We took things slow, letting the relationship build naturally, like a friendship that eventually turned into something more. I couldn't deny the attraction, but it felt different than anything I'd ever experienced. I wasn't rushing to fill a void left by Emily. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. It was just two people getting to know each other, and that felt right. Things were finally looking up. But I still had moments when I'd think about the past, about the life I had, the lies I had lived, and the bitter taste of betrayal that would forever linger. I still thought about the day I found out everything. But now, I understood. That day in the elevator when everything had come crashing down was the moment that freed me. Freed me from the illusion of a perfect life, freed me from the chains I had tied myself to for so long. And now, here I was, standing in my new life, in a new elevator, alone. I pressed the button for the top floor and leaned against the cold metal wall, the hum of the elevator comforting in its own way. As the doors slid shut, I couldn't help but smile to myself. If the elevator hadn't stopped that day, I whispered to no one in particular, I'd still be living in that illusion. The doors opened with a soft chime and I stepped out, a free man. The past was behind me, and the future, it was mine to create.